Tonight, facing a public health pandemic, an economic collapse, and a long overdue reckoning on racial injustice and systemic racism, the city of Denver is looking for a view from you. Every year, the city creates a balanced budget to meet the needs of our more than 700,000 residents. This year, balancing the budget was more difficult than ever, but here in Denver, we have a history and tradition of coming together to tackle big problems. As we look to 2021, we want to ask you what matters most. Join us for a televised community conversation on Denver's budget and priorities. The focus tonight is on you. We'll ask you questions and capture your feedback. You can participate by calling in, texting, or posting to social media. However you participate, your voice will be heard. Tonight's program is brought to you by the City and County of Denver, Colorado. And now, Denver's community conversation on city priorities. Good evening and welcome to Denver's community conversation on the 2021 budget and spending priorities. I'm Larry Schooler. It's your money, your tax dollars, and we want to know what matters most to you right now. Tonight is about you, and you have the full attention of your city officials, including Mayor Michael B. Hancock and Chief Financial Officer Brendan Hanlon. Hello and welcome to you guys. Good to have you. Thank you very much for being with us.
Good evening.
Here's how you can participate in our conversation tonight. Those of you listening by phone, you won't have to do very much. You'll just be able to listen to instructions from me. But if you're watching us on Denver 8 or on Facebook, you can call in to make some comments right on the air. We have two phone numbers set up for you tonight, one in English, and that's 888-400-1932. Again, 888-400-1932. En español, 888-400-9342. Forgive me for my poor Spanish, but we do have a Spanish simulcast of tonight's broadcast, and if you'd like to join us in Spanish, you can do so at that phone number. You can also use your phone to text in your comments and respond to polls via text message. What you're going to need to do is set up a new text message and send a text to the phone number 22333. That's 22333. So that number is the equivalent of a phone number you might otherwise be texting of a friend or a colleague. And then you're going to put in the words view from you, no spaces. It's not case sensitive, but it is space sensitive. So you want to just type view from you, no spaces, and hit send. That tells the system that you're responding to our polls tonight. And then subsequently, you'll see choices A, B, C, D, and E on the screen, and you just have to enter the letter of your choice, or if it's an open-ended question, just type in your response. So again, send a text message to 22333 with the words view from you, no spaces, and hit send, and then prepare to respond to polls using the correct letter of your choice or an open-ended response. We're also going to be monitoring social media since we're streaming on Facebook, so please feel free to post comments with the hashtag view from you, either on Facebook, Twitter, or elsewhere, and you can also respond to polls on the web. That's pollev.com/view from you. Again, that's pollev.com/view from you. View from you. We are about to pose our first question to those of us who are joining by phone or video. I'm going to be giving instructions for our phone listeners first, and then I'll review what you should do to respond by text or online. So we're going to go ahead and pull up the first poll question of the evening. And as you can see on the screen, if you're watching us, our first question is, where do you live in Denver? What part of Denver do you live in? So for those listening on the phone, if you live in Northwest Denver, please dial or press 1. If you live in Northeast Denver, please dial or press 2. If you live in Central Denver, please dial or press 3. Southwest, dial or press 4. And Southeast, dial or press 5. For those who are following our video broadcast and texting or responding on the web, you should see the prompts up on the screen. Again, send a text with the text message view from you to 22333. And then once you've hit send on that and it's gone through, then you can just type in A, B, C, D, or E, or go to the website up above at pollev.com/view from you, and the polls should update automatically. So again, for those of you just joining us, what part of Denver do you live in? If you live in Northwest and you're listening to me by phone, press 1. Northeast, please press 2. Central, please press 3. Southwest, please press 4. Or Southeast, please press 5. We like to get a sense of where folks are joining us from tonight. And I notice that on the phone line, it looks like we have a higher uptick so far from both the Northeast, Central, and Southeast parts of town. Northeast is winning at the moment. And as you can see up on the screen, our texters are more from Northwest and Northeast Denver. So great to see a broad array of folks who are joining us from all parts of our community. We will also be able to take comments on the air, as I mentioned, later on here in the broadcast. So if you're interested in getting into the call queue, you can press 0. A screener will take your name and information, and we'll get to callers here in a little bit. But first, let's go to our very next poll question, if we could. The other question we wanted to ask in terms of getting a sense of who's on the line is whether you are a renter or do you own your home? So again, the question is going to be, are you a renter or do you own your home? If you're a renter and you're listening on the phone, press 1. If you're a homeowner, press 2. And as you can see up on the screen, if you're a renter, you can text A, or a homeowner can text B. Once again, if you are a renter, please press 1. If you are a homeowner, please press 2 if you're listening to us on the phone. Gentlemen, so far our homeowners are outnumbering our renters 3-1 in both on-screen responses and the telephone responses. I myself am a renter, so I'm sympathetic to those folks as well as the homeowning public. One more time, if you're listening to me on the phone and you'd like to join in on the polls, if you are a renter, please press 1, and if you're a homeowner, please press 2. Let's move on to our last poll here in this first segment before we dive into our conversation. And this is certainly a difficult question, I think, for some folks to answer, but we think it's an important one to kind of help frame our conversation about the financial health of our community. The question is, how worried are you that you will be able to afford next month's expenses like rent or the mortgage? And know that as you're answering, we will not be sharing any personal information with these answers. We're just simply trying to get some anonymous feedback on kind of the state of our local economy. So again, the question is, how worried are you that you will be able to afford next month's expenses like rent or the mortgage? So if you're listening on the phone, press 1 if you are very worried that you won't be able to pay rent or the mortgage on time. Press 2 if you are somewhat worried. Press 3 if you are slightly confident you can make those payments. And press 4 if you are very confident that you can pay the rent or mortgage on time. And again, you'll see choices up on the screen. A is very worried, B somewhat worried, C slightly confident, and D very confident. But if you're listening to my voice on the phone, please press 1 for very worried about meeting basic expenses like rent or the mortgage, 2 for somewhat worried, 3 for slightly confident, and 4 if you are very confident. And gentlemen, it appears that about half of our folks listening by phone are very confident, with about equal amounts slightly confident or somewhat worried. And I suspect, Mayor Hancock, you've been hearing, and Brendan hearing that kind of feedback for these many months that we've been in a recession. So we are going to now formally welcome the two panelists that we have with us for this evening. First of all, I'm pleased to welcome Michael B. Hancock. He's Denver's 45th mayor and a Denver native. He served for 8 years on the city council, and before joining the city, worked for the Denver Housing Authority, the National Civic League, with which I'm affiliated, and the Urban League. Mayor, welcome to you.
Thank you, Larry, and thank you for doing this. I want to thank everyone out there who's online and on the telephone for joining us. And I'm always, inspired when I'm joined by our Chief Financial Officer, a member of my cabinet, Brendan Hanlon, who has worked just tirelessly with the budget director, Stephanie Adams, and their teams to pull together a budget proposal for 2021. As you already know and have noted, that every year by law, we must create a balanced budget to meet the needs of the 700,000 plus residents that call our great city home. As you can imagine, this year, balancing the budget for 2021, preparing the budget for 2021 was more difficult than ever, as we like many other cities across this country, by the way, face a triple threat, a public health pandemic, an economic collapse, and of course, the long overdue reckoning on race. Tough decisions were made in all areas, and the budget reflects the priorities of supporting those in our community who are most vulnerable and under-resourced, continue to respond to the coronavirus pandemic and promote public health, keeping our neighborhoods safe, and getting people back to work by rebuilding our local economy. Here in Denver, we like to say we have a history of coming together to tackle big problems. This is not the first recession I've sat here and helped work the city through. That's not Brendan's. We have seen tough times before, but not to the depths that we have seen this cycle, and one in which it has taken tremendous work and discussion in agencies across the city, as well as with city council, to begin to tackle. But that's why we're here tonight, to talk about what matters most to the residents right now as we look to 2021, how we can work within our means to address those concerns. And so, Larry, again, I thank you for helping us out tonight. And I want to thank our finance and budget team for doing the exemplary work that they've done to prepare us for this moment, and everyone else who's online for joining us.
Thanks, Mayor, very much. I also want to formally say hello to Brendan Hanlon, the city's Chief Financial Officer, who is overseeing the city's full financial aid and accounting responsibilities. He has been with the city since 2002 in a variety of roles, including as Deputy Mayor and as Budget Director. Brendan, great to have you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Larry. I appreciate it.
And we've talked a little bit, Brendan, about the national dynamics at play, economically speaking. The mayor alluded a little bit to the local. Can you we're going to put a slide up here on the screen here in just a moment, but can you kind of help us understand what you've been up against as you and the rest of the city has had to deal with the economic challenges that you're encountering this year? Can you give us some context for that?
Sure, absolutely. First, thanks, Larry, for hosting. Thank you all for being online. It's really great to be able to share this story. Even though it's challenging, being able to have an opportunity to communicate like this is really important to me, the mayor, the administration, to really get a dialogue going. When times are tough, a dialogue is what gets us through these tough times. So thank you all. Mayor, thank you for the kind words. I am supported by a fantastic team. A couple of those folks are joining us tonight. In case there are questions, Stephanie Adams, the budget director, Laura Perry, capital planning and programming. And Larry, yes, you're right. It has been an exceptionally difficult year. I've been with the city for nearly 19 years now, and I thought actually the Great Recession was going to be that kind of fiscal crisis of my career, to be honest with you. But what we're seeing is a really challenging environment, not just for 2020, but into 2021. We are forecasting revenue decreases of about $220 million in 2020. That what you're looking at on the screen right now, that represents a 10% decrease in overall general fund revenue. So general fund inside city terms is where our basic services are provided. So think of police, fire, sheriff, finance, street maintenance, community planning and development, public health, all are funded out of this stream. And we're seeing, and you can see on the chart here that it's significant, even compared to 2009. That was the first year of the Great Recession.
Right.
We're also closing a budget gap of $190 million in 2021. And the reason that this is, Larry, is because our general fund is very dependent on retail sales. All of us going out and consuming and buying different things over the course of the year, as well as we have a heavy dependency on tourism and hospitality as well. So whenever you go out to a bar or a restaurant, there's sales tax on that. Those have been really impacted, and that's why we're seeing these challenges right now. But I think what we've done through the mayor's leadership is really make sure that we have a 2020 and 2021 budget that really look at responding to public health, the economic crisis, making sure that we meet the needs of our community, rebuild our economy in a way that's sustainable and equitable.
I appreciate that. And I'm going to jump right into questions for the public to respond to that I know have been top of mind, both for you and the mayor, as it relates to the specifics of how the city prioritizes the spending of their public dollars. And as you alluded to, it's never easy to make these decisions, even in boom times, let alone the times that we're living in now. So I'm sure it's especially difficult. We have up on the screen, and we're going to bring up for our callers a next poll question that kind of gets at the broader priorities. And just to reiterate, for those listening on the phone, you'll be able to just press on your touch-tone phone to respond. Folks who want to text can text view from you to 22333. And then After they've sent that text, just put in the letter of their choice. If you've already done the first part, you're good to go. You can also visit polev.com/view from you, or post comments on social with the hashtag view from you. So on screen, you will see our first question. What is your, I should say, top priority for the city? What is your top priority for the city? And we're going to give you a few choices, but we're also going to give you an opportunity to share some additional thoughts about that question. So if you believe it should be continuing to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, please press 1. Again, press 1 if you think it should be continuing to respond to COVID-19. Press 2 if you think it should be strengthening services for the homeless and under-resourced communities. So again, press 2 if you think it should be strengthening services for the homeless and under-resourced communities. Press 3 to select keeping Denver residents and neighborhoods safe. Again, press 3 to select keeping Denver residents and neighborhoods safe. And press 4 for rebuilding the economy. Again, press 4 for rebuilding the economy. So I'm going to read those one more time. Press 1 if you think it should be continuing to respond to the pandemic. Press 2 if you think it should be strengthening services for the homeless and under-resourced communities. Press 3 to select keeping Denver residents and neighborhoods safe, and press 4 for rebuilding the economy. Gentlemen, I guess I'm curious as we see these responses come in, maybe Mayor, if you could share a little bit about how you're viewing the specifics of these priorities, why they matter so much at this time to our budget decisions.
Well, I think what you see is the broad reach of this economic impact of COVID, quite frankly. Obviously people want to make sure and know that their government is on post and doing what's necessary to save the city. And that has been our top priority as far as confronting the COVID pandemic. With regards to strengthening services for the homeless and under-resourced, every one of us in the city have acknowledged that we have seen more residents who are unsheltered in our community, and the need to move to address and help resource those individuals with shelter, making sure they're linked with the necessary social services to really stabilize their situation. Extremely important. And then obviously, rebuilding the community or the economy is extremely important. People who are out of work, I have worked on and volunteered in helping to give out food baskets. And I've seen people come through there who've said to me, Mayor, I would have never imagined, I've never been in a line for food before, would never imagine that I would be, but yet they've lost their jobs, they're at risk of losing their homes. And so they're uncertain in terms of what's going to happen in their future. And so they want to know that we are focused on rebuilding the economy. And I believe that helping with small businesses, job training, retraining areas, making sure we're dispersing the capital where we can and trying to continue to make investments in infrastructure that drive economic development are all critically important going forward. And then there's an interesting piece. When you talk about keeping Denver residents and neighborhoods safe, we have seen an uptick in crime in the city of Denver. But what's interesting is that Denver is still considered one of the safest larger cities in the country. And as residents, we tend to take for granted sometimes that we are a pretty safe city, even in times where we are seeing rising crime. We know that comparing to other cities that we're not as unsafe as they are. And so that's an interesting number to me, and that I wonder to what extent people view their safety as something that, right now, we know there's a rise in crime, but it's still not to the stages that we see other cities at this point. But anyway, these results don't surprise me at all.
Yeah, and interestingly, on the phone, we're seeing almost a pretty even split. I would say that there's a very slight advantage for COVID-19, but a lot of interest in public safety, which you alluded to in your opening comments as it relates to the interrelationship between public safety and dealing with issues of race and the treatment of folks from all walks of life, and the intertwining of those issues nationally has certainly been something that has been talked about quite a bit. In a moment, I'm going to go to one of our first callers who has a comment that's related to this. I'm going to ask my team to move to the next slide because we want to allow people to, let's see. We'll actually go back to the prior slide there. We'll stay with the top priority slide. But if folks would like to comment, they can do so right now by pressing 0 on their phone. If you haven't called in, you can call in at the numbers below, and you can then you will be able to press 0, speak to a call screener, and be able to get your comment on the air. So here in just a moment, we're going to go to Linda, who has called us tonight, and she's, I think, dialed in from the southeast part of town. And so if you just give me 1 second, I'm going to make sure we get her sound up here. And I believe we're ready for Linda, if she's on the line. Linda, if you're there, please go ahead.
Hi, you're going to hear some beeping because my phone is running out of battery. But I'm calling to see if you will support the Colorado Safe Parking Initiative that's being sponsored by the Interfaith Alliance of Colorado, and it's being modeled after Safe Lots that's going on in Longmont under Hope for Longmont.
And thanks for your question. I got to admit to you, I'm not familiar with the Carroll Safe Parking Initiative.
Just beginning, I believe, to be organized.
Okay.
But they have a website that is www.colosafeparking.org.
Okay, we'll take a look at it. I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah,
right
Linda.
now, I asked a person, and she thought that Denver, if we wanted to have safe parking in our church, it was getting a zoning permit, but I don't know that that is accurate.
Well, thank you very much, Linda, for this very specific suggestion. And this is exactly the kind of thing that I think this program is meant for, Mayor and Brendan, is something that's very specific and actionable. So we really appreciate that sentiment. I also want to turn to another caller, Pamela, who has joined us, I believe, from, I think she's in central Denver, but I could be mistaken about that. But Pamela, if you're there, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Great. My question actually has to do with a scheduled increase for minimum wage starting January 1st, and if there's been any discussion or consideration for either delaying or decreasing the amount of increase since we're going through this difficult economic time.
Yeah, Pamela, great question. We've had some internal conversations. We haven't had much with City Council, and there are a couple of schools of thought here. Obviously, one is to suspend the implementation, but you at some point are going to have to catch up, and you'd have to come back and pick up the minimum wage ordinance and advance it, or recognizing that the market has already had a challenge, is to go ahead and implement it, knowing that you may still have some shaken out within the market with a higher minimum wage, and take it, at least you stay on schedule for the minimum wage going forward. So we have not made final determinations on that yet. There will have to be some conversation with City Council on that as well.
There is another question that is somewhat related. Thank you very much for the call. There is another question coming in from Helen, I believe, calling from the north side of Denver, that relates a little bit to the economy. So let's go to Helen. Helen, you're on the air.
Yes. My question, I guess, would be the taxes that, I don't know whether it's the city, the state, gets from pot. Why can't some of that pot money be reallocated to some of these things that, that really need to be done? Since it's this type, this is not regular times. This is almost like it's a serious recession, if not a depression. So it's affecting everyone. And why can't some of that go to the things that you're talking about to help between the homeless, the unemployment, the small businesses, the schools?
Great question. Heather. I'll let our Chief Financial Officer.
Sure. I smile because I get this question very frequently in this role coming from Denver. Great question. We do include that revenue stream in our general fund. So the numbers that I was showing include the sales tax that is applied to retail marijuana sales, medical marijuana sales, all going to the general fund and support our services across the board. Also, a couple of years ago, we actually dedicated an increment of that sales tax. We increased it and we dedicated over to affordable housing as well. So you're right on track in terms of making sure that we're thoughtful about that category. Just for you to know, actually, we could track different industry clusters, and marijuana sales actually have been propping up our sales and use tax and has been one of the bright points in our overall revenue profile. But for that, we would have actually had to reduce more in terms of services. So you're right to think that we should be putting it towards our services, and we have been for a few years now. And then when appropriate, we've been putting it towards affordable housing too.
Thanks, Brandon. You know, a lot of people believe we segregated those dollars, and Denver was one of the few municipalities that did not segregate those dollars early on. It wasn't until a couple of years ago that we actually earmarked part of it for what Brendan laid out. We started, I think, first for some infrastructure investment, and then we came back the following year and earmarked some of those dollars for affordable housing. But they've always been a part of our overall general fund that we allocate for the services of the people of Denver. Great question, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen, for that question. And in the interest of time, I'm going to move us forward to another question that kind of dives a little bit more deeply. We were just talking about high-level priorities for the Denver budget. Now we're going to talk about some specific aspects of the budget. So when it comes to responding to COVID-19, what is most important to you? For those who are listening on the phone, here are your choices. So when it comes to responding to COVID-19, what's most important to you? If it's community testing sites, press 1. Again, press 1 for community testing sites. If it's mobile testing units, you can press 2. If it's public health inspections, you can press 3. And if it's personal protective equipment for small businesses and nonprofits, PPE for small businesses and nonprofits, press 4. I'll repeat those again. For community testing sites, you'd press 1. For mobile testing units, you'd press 2. For public health inspections, press 3. And for PPE, personal protective equipment for small businesses and nonprofits, please press 4. We are going to be going here in just a minute to a caller on this subject. But before I do that, I have to say, gentlemen, the one that stood out to me a little bit was public health inspections, because I have to believe that the whole regime for a business, any kind of establishment, to ensure that it is safe must have just gone topsy-turvy here in the last several months. Can you say, either of you, more about just that particular aspect of our pandemic response, public health inspections?
Well, let me just say that our public health inspectors are doing an enormous job, and obviously we've had to pull on some other resources to help them out in a sense to survey the city and make sure that businesses are following the protocols, and customers, patrons are following the protocols of COVID-19 that we've established, not only in the city of Denver, but throughout the state. So again, none of this surprises us. The community testing sites are doing very well. We have the city of Denver set up the largest testing site in the state of Colorado. We were at the Pepsi Center for several months, probably a good 6 of the last, maybe 7 of the last 8.5, 9 months. And we broke it up to now create these community testing sites. We've had our mobile Winnie out there, which is our mobile testing site, roaming the city and getting to those who could not get to a testing site at the Pepsi Center at the time. And this PPE for small businesses, I have begun the process of touring some of our business districts, and those business owners are so grateful for the kits that have arrived that have sanitizer, thermometers, and gloves and masks for themselves and their employees and patrons. So, you know, Denver has been kind of comprehensive in this, and we're going to stay committed to this. But nothing beats the guidance that we have given each other. Of course, that is to wear the mask, social distance, avoid large gatherings, and of course, washing your hands very regularly.
If you're just joining us, this is A View from You, a conversation about Denver's community priorities, specifically in terms of taxpayer dollars and spending and the budget. If you are hearing my voice, that means you're either watching us on Denver 8 or on Facebook or listening to us on the phone. You can call into our meeting with the toll-free numbers that are up on the screen. You can also text your comments in with the prompt that's on the screen, and I'm going to ask my team to move us to the next slide, which will give folks an opportunity to share additional open-ended comments via text as it relates to responding to COVID-19, what might be most important to you about the city's response. I'm now going to go to a caller. Again, you can call in at 888-400-1932 to be able to speak live on the air. But I'm going to go to Bill, who's in Denver. And Bill, please go ahead if you can hear me.
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sure.
Yeah. I'm wondering when the city's going to open up the rec centers. I was just real curious. I was looking at a WHO website, World Health Organization, and according to them yesterday, and I just can't find it right now, but anyway, not a single, now this is pro athlete, I understand they're in the best of shape, has died from this virus. Even our own Von Miller of the Broncos, who has asthma, got the virus, recovered quickly, and is playing now. I'm just wondering, why are the rec centers closed? Because we can't really go out and ride our bikes and run every day with this air we've been breathing because of the fires, but yet all the city rec centers are closed. So we can't even get exercise. And it seems to be 88% of the people dying from this are obese. So, I mean, it just seems like a counterintuitive to me.
Yeah,
you know?
we have been, Bill, great question. We have been focused on sanitizing the rec centers. And in fact, we were moving to open them up until we started seeing the numbers going in the absolute wrong direction. And you're talking about closed in, you're talking about people who might be perspiring and pores moving across and all over the place. So the reality is that we still hope to get them open by the end of the year. You're going to see some of them start rolling open in short order. I don't have the exact time frame, but I know that the staff have been working to sanitize, set up protocols within the rec centers during this time. And we had hoped to be open with some of them, by now, but the numbers do not support Denver rec centers.
I know the 24-hour fitness where I go, they have these bottles with dispensers about every few feet, throughout the gym. And everybody that works out there, it's just like part of the routine. You grab a bottle, wipe your bench down and your weights, whatever it was you were handling, and put them back. And it seems to be like part of the workout regimen for them now. And plus they have periodic group cleaning, but and nobody there has reported yet. We've been open for a few months there, but anyway, I was just wondering about the rec center.
Thank you very much for those comments, Bill.
It's a great question. I didn't mean to step on you with your answer. I work out 3 or 4 days a week as well. I go to a gym. The difference between an adult fitness facility where you and I work out and a rec center is you have a lot of young people who are in and out. You can't control as much spacing. You cannot control the crowd as much as you would like to. We have much more diversity in terms of the age of young people, of people who are going in and out of our rec centers than you do in these fitness facilities. And so that is a difference. Yes, I see as adults, we're all cleaning up the equipment after we're done using it. We're putting it back, we're racking it back. We are doing what's necessary, keeping our mask on. But when you have young people, you enter the mix, it becomes much more of a different situation.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. A couple of more health-related calls on the line. We're going to go next to Linda Sarmo, who has a question related to health and COVID. Linda, please.
Hi. Yes, I was, I think testing is really, really important, but I'm wondering what the city's doing about contact tracing, because it seems like, knowing you have COVID is one thing, but finding where it came from and who else might be affected is equally as important.
Yeah, Linda, great question. I need someone to ask a tough question for Brendan Hanlon on budget and finance.
I'm good, Mayor. I'm good.
Let me work on those plants we have.
Yeah, there you go.
Their questions.
But we set up the third leg of the stool, if you will, Linda, was contact tracing. From very early on, we talked about the importance of setting up that infrastructure. It's a very difficult, it's a very complex thing. People don't want to give up any information when you call them, but we have a robust team through our public health and environment department focused on contact tracing. We have a lot of staff that have been redeployed, focused on making the contacts and tracing individuals who may have been in contact or exposed to the virus. And so we are on it. And I absolutely agree with you. Just as important as testing, just as important as wearing masks and social distancing is contact tracing. And we took it as seriously when we set up our protocols.
If you're just joining us, you'll see up on the screen that we are taking kind of open-ended comments around what's most important to you about how the city responds to COVID-19. And if you haven't texted so far, you text view from you to 22333. That's view from you, full words, no spaces, to 22333. You can also go to the website that's up on the screen, polev.com/view from you. Just want to give everyone peace of mind that even though these answers are coming fast and furiously and it's hard to read them here, we will be certainly giving the city all of the responses unabridged. So even if we can't get to all of them right now, they will certainly get them all in due course. And we're going to go next to Brenda in Northeast Denver. Brenda, if you're there, please go ahead.
Hi, Mayor Hancock and his team. Thank you for taking this call. My question for you is what percentage of the city's budget is dedicated to public health and how much? And then of those dollars, how much is going to be dedicated to the COVID, and are those being increased in this upcoming budget year? And if so, how much?
Great, Brenda. We're going to let Brendan answer that.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the pie chart that breaks that out, Brenda. I will. I'm going to scroll through this as quickly as I can. I've actually got the budget document up to get you that answer. But I think it's also important to note, it's something I didn't really talk about very much, but we've also received some federal funding by way of FEMA, as well as the CARES Act to the city and county of Denver. And those are actually helping us supplement our current city spend. And we've been spending tens of millions of dollars looking at procuring PPE, additional equipment for our city staff, as well as promoting other equipment support out to the greater community as well. So you should think about this as something that is not just the city's expense, but it's also a portion of those federal dollars that is going to this as well. Sorry, I'm just I'm buying myself some time to get to this pie chart.
Well, we appreciate the level of detail that you're bringing to this, and I'll fill here for just a second and say that it's interesting to consider the city of Denver, the city and county of Denver's particular role when, of course, we know that all levels of government are having to respond, not just to COVID, but to all of the economic challenges we're facing as a country. So I think it's tricky sometimes for the public, maybe for city leaders, to determine, where is that lane for the city of county to be in as compared to any of the number of other players. Brendan, I'll come to you quickly, and then I need to move us on to the next subtopic.
Yeah. So our budget has about $18.4 million for our public health and environment operating budget. Now that's out of the general fund. We also have other agencies. So think of emergency management and other agencies that help provide that kind of infrastructure to respond to emergency like this. That, in addition to the tens of millions of dollars that we put forward towards this emergency response from FEMA, as well as CARES Act dollars.
Well, once again, if you're just joining us, we're having what I think is a really robust and interesting conversation about Denver's community priorities for spending and the budget here in the coming year. This is A View from You, live from Denver, Colorado. I'm Larry Schooler, joined tonight by Mayor Michael B. Hancock and Chief Financial Officer Brendan Hanlon. We're going to move on to our next poll question, and if you'd like to participate in the polls, you can do that by text message, web, both of which will be on the screen, or on the phone. If you dial into our toll-free number, you'll be able to do it by touch-tone phone. We're going to talk next about the social safety net, which we've heard a little bit about from some of our callers, but I'm going to take another caller after this poll that's related to that. The question is, when it comes to the social safety net, what is most important to you? So if eviction assistance programs really ranks highest, you're going to want to press 1 if you're listening on the phone. Again, eviction assistance programs, press 1. If it's property tax relief programs, property tax relief, press 2. Again, press 2 for property tax relief programs. If it's emergency sheltering for people experiencing homelessness, please press 3. Again, press 3 for emergency sheltering for people experiencing homelessness. And press 4 if it's stable housing and supportive services for people experiencing homelessness, particularly those with frequent encounters with the criminal justice system or emergency medical systems. So there's emergency sheltering, which was choice 3, then there's stable housing and supportive services, which is choice 4. I'm going to read those one more time. Press 1 for eviction assistance programs, press 2 for property tax relief programs, press 3 for emergency sheltering for the homeless, and press 4 for stable housing and supportive services for people experiencing homelessness. Again, you can do those polls on your touchtone phone. You can also do them via text or the web with the prompts that are up on the screen. Guys, I have to believe that, you know, we need a lot of all of those things. I certainly am hearing nationally about major challenges. We did a broadcast with the city of New York, major challenges with both property tax relief and eviction assistance, but even to the naked eye, we can see that homelessness remains a major challenge nationally. I'm going to go to a caller that has a particular comment on this before I turn to you all. Diane is calling, and Diane, please join us with your comment.
Hi, my name is Diane, and I am very concerned that we are sweeping people around the city instead of providing them motel rooms and stable housing. I think it would be less expensive in the long term to get people into housing and into long-term motel rooms during the pandemic.
Diane, you just laid out really a lot of what we have been doing for the last 8 or 9 months. I personally spent time on the phone trying to working to open up hotel rooms for our unsheltered neighbors in Denver. We were successful to a large extent of having some of the hotels that had become vacant as a result of people no longer traveling or using hotels to open up and to do contracts with the city to allow for our unsheltered residents to go in during this critical time. Denver was also successful in setting up 2 pretty large shelters at the National Western Center for men and women. The men were in the education hall, women were in the Coliseum. We were able to house over 1,000 people a night. Over 1,000 people a night between the 2 locations. But when we go in and clean up encampments, we are doing a couple things. One, we're first and foremost trying to connect individuals with services, housing, mental health, behavioral health services, addiction services, so we can begin to stabilize their circumstances and advance them into into housing or transitional housing or shelter wherever we can place them at the time. So it's just not.
Denver Homeless Out Loud has been talking to these people, and they are not getting housing at the sweeps. We have interviewed people, we have collected data. If even one person gets some kind of motel or housing as a result of a sweep, that is all. And sometimes it's not even one person.
Well, we do work to connect them. And I get anecdotes as well from people who actually moved on to permanent housing as part of our efforts to move in and to clean encampments. And so while we're monitoring this, we do bring in hotel vouchers. We do bring in opportunity to be connected to transitional housing or even emergency housing, shelter at the time. But I think it's important for you to note that as we look at every one of these 4 standards that are part of this poll, and I think it'll be a great opportunity to turn over to Brendan. This is part of our ecosystem for every social service net client that we're attempting to work with. The city of Denver, through its general fund, is investing every one of these to the tune of millions of dollars. They're also part of a very expensive cycle in terms of our shelter residents that we have to interrupt in order to move people to a more stable situation. Brendan?
And before I turn to Brendan, I just want to add a couple of other comments that have come in via social media on this particular topic. One is from Katie on Facebook, says, "We need more housing and hotels for unhoused neighbors. Shelters spread COVID. Until we have enough housing for them all, the sweeps must stop." We also have a comment, I don't know who this is from, but it's on Facebook. "We're really throwing more and more money towards homeless issues with no data that shows we're moving in the right direction. It's almost like we're attracting more homeless here. I believe that was from someone named Bob on Facebook. So obviously lots of different perspectives on this very difficult topic. Brendan, go ahead.
Sure. Just to provide some kind of number context to where our investment priorities have been, each year for the 2020 budget, we're looking at about $70 million worth of investment on that housing continuum that includes the vouchers that the mayor was talking about, other affordable housing projects. For the federal funding, we have dedicated $15.5 million towards housing and sheltering through 2020. That's both a combination of CRF dollars. And then, I was really focused on the challenges of the 2021 budget when I mentioned the $190 million. But we did have some expanded investments in that budget, including $5 million to operate a new shelter facility, $1.5 million for homeless outreach resources, $3.4 million for a new solution center to get people treatment, and then $3 million for property tax relief, TANF cash support, and eviction assistance in our human services organization. So although it's been a challenging proposition, I think we tried to make sure that we leaned into this challenge and identified dollars, even in a tight budget year.
I think one of the things that's often challenging, I'll speak for myself as a resident of a city, sometimes when you're hearing about municipal budgets and you hear the millions of dollars, it can be hard sometimes to understand, what that equates to in terms of sort of tangible impact. And so we might, with time permitting, we might try to delve a little bit more deeply into that. I know the city is also working on some tools online where someone can see exactly how their individual tax receipt, so to speak, goes to different elements of what Brendan's been talking about. I'm going to take a call from Deborah in Northeast Denver on this topic. Deborah, if you're there, please go ahead. You're on the air.
Okay, my question is, it's concerning the Section 8 housing. I know before the COVID even, came into play, individuals were having a hard time finding housing because a lot of the homeowners would not accept their Section 8 vouchers. And my question is that going to continue to be an issue?
Deborah, the difficulty in addressing that question is one is Denver Housing Authority handles the Section 8 program. But in terms of your anecdote, the story that you share, I've heard that time and time again. The market was not conducive for private property owners who wanted to lease their properties to accept the Section 8 voucher. I joined with a group of mayors around the region that actually provided an incentive. We pulled together our resources and we were providing incentives for landlords to lease to Section 8 residents, because you're right, they were not, or at least there were very few options out there. And I know Denver Housing Authority continues to try to work on this issue as well. The market has not shifted, interestingly enough, during this pandemic and economic collapse. Housing is still pretty solid in Denver and metro region. And so it's going to continue to be a difficult thing unless we find, through our federal and state resources, ability to intercept and to create even greater incentives for landlords to rent and accept those vouchers.
We just have so much to talk about tonight. Deborah, thank you for your call. But in the interest of time, we're going to be only with you for about the next 10 minutes. I'd like to just move us to one of our last two subtopics. So we're going to put a new poll question up on the screen that relates to public safety, which we've been talking about in different ways throughout the evening. But we want to find out what your priority is when it comes to public safety. So if you're listening on the phone, I'm going to give you some choices. So if strengthening the co-responder program, which pairs mental health professionals with police officers responding to emergency calls with a behavioral mental health crisis, press 1. Again, that's press 1 for the co-responder program, pairing mental health professionals with police officers. Press 2 for the STAR program, which deploys mental health professionals and social workers to certain 911 calls instead of police. So press 2 for the STAR program, which deploys mental health professionals and social workers instead of police. Press 3 for strengthening youth violence prevention efforts. Again, press 3 for strengthening youth violence prevention efforts. And press 4 for strengthening criminal justice diversion programs that address the underlying causes of incarceration and connect people to resources. It's obvious that this is a topic that has attracted significant interest, I think, within the city and county of Denver, given the detail on these choices. I'll repeat the choices one more time. Press 1 for strengthening the co-responder program, pairing mental health professionals with police officers. Press 2 for strengthening the STAR program, which deploys mental health professionals in place of police. Press 3 for strengthening youth violence prevention efforts, and press 4 for strengthening diversion programs that help address the underlying causes of incarceration. I have a call that's a gentleman, a caller has been standing by for quite some time, who has a comment related to public safety. So Dean Kent Duncan is what I have listed here. Dean, if you're there, please go ahead.
Hi, my question is for the mayor, I guess all of you, but seems to me like in the matter of public safety that Denver's per capita for police and fire has gone down, and yet the city's increased in size. To the mayor's comment that we are a safe city compared with other cities, in my opinion, is a poor metric. We don't compare ourselves to Chicago or Los Angeles. We compare ourselves to Denver, and we're losing ground, I believe. And I'd like to know why there isn't more in the budget for more police and more fire.
So I'll let Brendan speak to this, Dean, but actually we're trying to hold steady the funding for public safety. This is not an area that we have proposed to cut. In fact, before COVID, we were on a trajectory to continue to grow our public safety, particularly police, with regards to numbers in comparison to the population. And so that was something that we started in partnership with City Council several years ago. We knew as a city we were growing exponentially, and we needed to make sure we had a complement police department to do the same. I stay committed to that. I remain committed to that value going forward, and we have maintained our commitment to public safety in this budget, not cutting in turn. But we are, we are not going to be training as many academies, but we are going to continue to make our investments in public safety. Brendan?
Yeah, the mayor is right. Thanks for the question. We have been adding additional police officer positions to the police budget in each of the past 4 years, incrementally trying to make sure we add while having full academy classes to fill any vacancies that happen during the course of the year. On the fire side, we've also been adding fire stations as well, strategically based off of the response time, 4-minute response time. So the fire department goes through an analysis of making sure that they have 4-minute response times around their station. So we've been placing more stations by way of the Elevate Denver Bond program and the Better Denver Bond program. We have added stations and then have added companies to staff those stations over the past few years.
Yeah, I mean, this of course, as we all know, is coming against the backdrop of a remarkable conversation about, the future of public safety in America, who should be doing what. It's interesting to see of the responses we've gotten to these multiple choice questions, how many folks are interested in some of these programs where mental health professionals and social workers might actually take the place of police officers on some responses. So there'll be a lot here for the city to digest. I do want to encourage everybody to keep their comments on the substance of the matter. I know that there are some strongly held feelings and passions here, and we just want to focus on the issues rather than the personalities. Again, gentlemen, in the interest of time, I just want to get to our last subtopic here. Not that I want to stifle any discussion, but we will have other ways for the public to continue to give feedback on this. But we'll go to our last poll question for tonight, which relates to rebuilding the economy. And I know I've got at least one caller that I'll take on this topic. But when it comes to rebuilding the economy, if you're listening on the phone, when it comes to rebuilding the economy, what is most important to you? If it's economic support for small businesses, please press 1. Again, press 1 for small business. Press 2 for economic support and job retraining or training for job seekers and the workforce. I know we've actually gotten multiple comments, or I should say inquiries about dealing with unemployment issues with the state unemployment office and elsewhere. So press 1 for economic support for small business. Press 2 for economic support and job training for job seekers and the workforce. Press 3 for stimulating the economy through capital investments. And press 4 for monitoring the city's reserves or rainy day funds in the event that the pandemic might have a winter resurgence, which we've been hearing about. I know we're all hoping doesn't happen, but it's certainly a possibility. One more time, press 1 for support for small business, 2 for job training and retraining, 3 for stimulating the economy through capital investments, and 4 for monitoring the city's reserves or rainy day funds. Just in the interest of time, gentlemen, I'm going to go straight to a call, and this is, I believe, from Peter, who's been waiting very patiently. So, Peter, if you're there, you're on the air. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks so much. My name is Peter. I'm from East Denver. I spent the last 6 years consulting for the United Nations, including extensively on disaster management and on economic development. My kind of comment, I've been a little disappointed by the scope of the call in that we don't get the option to say, well, 3 is my most important choice, but in fact, if we were really smart about it, we would understand that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 are all connected, and we need kind of a bigger, better integrated approach at understanding that at the very first question, it was about, what's most important to you, rebuilding the economy or dealing with COVID? Well, if you're smart, you can do them with the same kinds of policies. So, I'm worried that we're thinking about it too narrowly. I know that we, obviously, every city in the world right now is facing some kind of fiscal austerity measures, which is only going to make things worse. We know from the 2008 financial crisis that the more austerity measures you push, social safety nets get weaker and weaker and weaker, and then 10 years later, 12 years later, you struggle in the midst of a pandemic. So I guess my question is there's no one simple question. I called the mayor's office every single day in March and April offering my help and didn't even get a call back. What are we doing to change the metrics that we're using to think about economics? Focusing on how can we kind of look at these just transitions. Obviously, capital investments and retraining go hand in hand. We need to do them together. That goes hand in hand with small businesses. Why are we thinking so narrow-minded about this?
Let me relieve you a little bit. We don't think narrow-minded with this. In fact, the questions being asked really reflect kind of the ecosystem in which we approach these sort of things. We recognize it is important to have a healthy, fiscally managed city. That's why there were reserves sitting there when we hit this pandemic. But it's important that we invest in small businesses, that we invest in making sure that we are training and retraining our residents who need to make sure that they are aligned with the current circumstances. We recognize by investing in our infrastructure, we create jobs, we drive the economy, we spur and inspire investment, that we do all the things that is a sign that the public sector is alive and well and willing to partner and to meet the private sector in its investments in the public realm. The city of Denver has moved into areas that were, and I think Brighton Boulevard, Union Station are 2 examples of this, where we leaned in with public investment first, with the expectation that the private sector will follow, and then you would see that private investment follow 3 to 1, and that's exactly what's happened. So we don't look at it compartmentalized the way you are assuming we are. That these questions really, and I refer to it as the ecosystem, reflect the ecosystem that we tend to follow when we try to manage the city on an economic and quite frankly, a social ecosystem basis.
One of the most difficult things I imagine for both you and for Brendan just has to be thinking, how do we possibly choose one aspect of this over another? I mean, there just are so many things. I mean, I've worked for municipal government myself for a number of years, and it's just remarkable to see the number of things people have come to depend on municipal government to do. And I don't just mean, welfare or things that are sort of, direct support. I mean, just all the kinds of services and investments and ways in which a city government can impact someone's quality of life and ability to provide for their families and so on. And so I don't envy you, gentlemen. I appreciate you, but I don't necessarily envy you. Only in the interest of time am I going to move us on to kind of our next steps from here. I want to indicate to those who are on the phone that I know there are some folks who have asked to speak that we won't have time to hear from tonight, but they will be given an opportunity to leave a voicemail, and we'll give all those voicemails to the city. We're also going to be transmitting all of the results of our polling, including our open-ended responses to the city, unabridged, unedited. So all of your comments are going to be going directly to the city. But let me go to our next slide and ask Brendan if he could here in just a second. Maybe share with us kind of where we go from here, and then Mayor, I'll come to you for kind of your closing thoughts as well. So we've got a slide up, I think, here in just a second that'll show us kind of our next steps.
Sure. Thanks for that. Yeah, we are in the middle of this budget process still. It lasts almost the better part of a year, but we're right in the middle of the council public hearing process, and that is next Monday at 5 p.m. via Zoom. You learn more about that on the Denver Gov website. I think it's important to emphasize that this is the beginning of a dialogue. I think that last question about, proposing everything as ors, isn't quite, the right way to think about it. You're right. This is about ands, and this is about emphasis. And I think this is the beginning of that dialogue. For the Department of Finance, we plan on taking these results and posting them on our website. We hope to do that by the end of next week, so that way that dialogue can continue and we demonstrate all the feedback that we got and have some thoughtful responses about those finance and policy questions to continue this dialogue. So thank you all for joining this meeting. It's been really great.
Mayor, I know you hear from constituents all day, every day through a variety of different channels, but this I think might be unique in terms of the ways that you have gotten to interact with folks in terms of the combination of polling and open-ended comments. And so I want to give you last word here for a moment and just ask kind of what's stood out to you, what's something that surprised you, what are some of your top line impressions?
I appreciate it, Larry. Again, thank you, and to Brendan and everyone who's listening in. What stood out to me is, again, people's focus and interest in the social net, the social safety net of our city, and those who are most vulnerable. And I recognize it. While we may approach it differently, it is really the kind of recognizing the entire ecosystem has to be carried forth to address it. That this is not as simple as just put a roof over someone's head, although that's extremely important in the ecosystem of taking care of our own shelter. The reality is that this is a very complex issue, and one in which that, if there are 20 people who aren't sheltered on the street, there are 20 different approaches that we have to take care of them. And so we are working as a city to bring that ecosystem forward, to disrupt that very expensive cycle of homelessness in the city of Denver, and to really honor the people who happen to be on shelter in our city. So that's just one example. Same way how we approach public safety, same way how we approach the fiscal health of the city. What does the ecosystem look like, and how we address each piece in order to allow ourselves to move forward. So, this has been a great conversation. It's a very difficult time to manage the financial health of the city and to prepare for 2021. But because the people of Denver have been generous and have invested in the city, we were as strong and as able to address the winds of COVID and the economic collapse than any other city. And I think we'll rebound just as strong. So we look forward to continued dialogue on the budget.
Well, it's remarkable, I think, just to see how so many of our economic challenges don't take a break for a pandemic, and how the balancing act continues to be so important. So I want to, first of all, thank the two of you, both for your public service and for being with us tonight. Mayor Michael B. Hancock, Brendan Hanlon, the Chief Financial Officer. Thank you both. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then you'll see up on the screen a lot of other folks we want to thank, including a tremendous number of staff members at the City and County of Denver, who I should add are working extremely hard for the people of Denver, especially under difficult circumstances, many of them still having to go physically into work when a lot of us are still able to work from home. So on behalf of our entire team, we thank you all for the service you've given to your community. And as you can see, it takes a lot of folks working feverishly behind the scenes to pull off a broadcast like this. So I want to thank them as well. And you see their names up on the screen. So on all of their behalf, I want to thank you all for joining us. And we look forward to hearing additional input from you as we move forward in this budget process. I'm Larry Schooler. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.